Hello everyone, welcome back to the Nonfiction Podcast, your number one stop for anything nonfiction. In this episode, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite nonfiction texts, that being American Prometheus, the triumph and tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer. If any of you don't know who Robert Oppenheimer is, he is the one who developed the atomic bomb back in the 1940s. Now, this book was written by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin. These two authors have already written books in the past, such as The Chairman and A World Destroyed, The Atomic Bomb, and The Grand Alliance. Now, Kai Bird is a columnist, and Martin J. Sherwin was a historian before he unfortunately passed away. Now, let's get into what you're all waiting for, the main idea of the book. See, the main idea of the book is the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer, from birth to death. It's his entire biography. It goes over his early life to him making his way to Harvard when he taught as a teacher for a few years, the entire construction and aftermath of the atomic bomb, his eventual death, and his lasting impact on the world, which is actually more than you would think. We're even going to go over the settings in this book, starting from New York, where he grew up, New Mexico, where he spent a lot of time and where he worked on the atomic bomb, Cambridge, where he studied for a while, and Germany, where he took a break from his studies. Now that the summary is over, we can start to talk about the meat of this book, that being the main ideas that were written. The first big idea in this book is Robert's first trip to New Mexico. Now, I know this doesn't sound important or interesting at all, but it actually is one of the catalysts for the biggest impact Robert had in the world. You see, when Robert first went to New Mexico for a trip when he was a teenager, he fell in love with the place. Robert was always a risk taker, and he enjoyed the roughness of New Mexico, which was such a contrast to his life home back in New York. He loved this place so much that not only did he buy property here, he even decided to start working here as a teacher, even though it would have benefited him more to teach somewhere else. Robert being in New Mexico wasn't the main reason he was chosen for the director of the Manhattan Project, which was the project that was developing the atomic bomb. However, him being in the first place was a reason for why he was chosen. The second big idea in the book is probably what everyone here is most interested in, and that is him working on the Manhattan Project. See, Robert didn't work on the Manhattan Project, he was the director for it. That is why when they tested the bomb and it came out successful, he was first proud of his accomplishment, but then he realized that the military was going to use this, and he felt guilty and sorry for the people of Japan. We know this when he said, and I quote, those poor little people. Robert knew that he wasn't the one who used the bomb, but he was still one of the reasons for being created and used in the first place. Now, our third and final big idea is mental health. When he was a kid, his mental health was alright. Like most kids, he wasn't going through any serious issues or troubles. That changes, however, when he gets older and becomes a young adult. Now, when he was at Harvard University, which I assume most of you know about, his mental health was fine. Now, when he was at Harvard University, which I assume most of you know about, his mental health was fine. He was going through some struggles about what he wanted to do for his career, but for the most part, he was fine. This all changes when he applies and gets accepted to Cavendish Laboratory. For those of you who don't know, this is a very popular university in Cambridge, which is a city in the United Kingdom. Robert wanted to study physics, and at the time, this was the best place to do it. He met up with his good friend Francis Ferguson, and he learned that Francis got a girlfriend. And normally this shouldn't be that important to Robert. However, even though he's in his 20s, he still not had any luck on finding a lover, which is very weird back at the time. I know today it wouldn't be that weird, but this was in the 20s, so Anyway, Robert, hearing this, it didn't help his mental health, and this was just the beginning. However, Robert hated his time at the university, as he thought the work was terrible, the lectures were boring and awful, and he just hated everything. He went as far as to poison an apple and put it on his teacher's desk. He didn't realize what he was doing and quickly just got rid of that. And after going on a trip to Paris with his friend Francis for a little week, he confessed to what he did. Francis, he was shocked, but he tried to console him and change the topic by mentioning that he and his girlfriend got engaged. This was a big mistake on his part, and Robert did not feel any better. Actually, it made him worse, and in a fit of rage or jealousy, he jumped on Francis' back and tried to strangle him. He then seemed to snap back to reality and stopped and quickly apologized. He was actually forgiven for all this. How? I have no idea why or how he didn't face any legal consequences. After it, he improved on his mental health, but that changed after the Manhattan Project and what they did with the bomb. It got even worse because he was a big speaker against using this bomb more. But the government, they didn't like that, and he was accused of being a communist. As they did back in the day, he went to court, lost horribly, he was pretty much banished, and his name was tarnished. And then after all he went through, all he did, he lived the rest of his life in disgrace until he passed away. So Robert's mental health wasn't the best throughout his life, but those were times where genuinely happy, but the majority of it was not the best. Now a lot of you are probably thinking, why? Why is this book relevant at all? Why should we care about some person died in the 60s? Now I'm here to tell you that you are wrong. This book is pretty relevant. First of all, the sheer depth of this book is, well, to put it simply, immense. It goes over every major event in his life in great detail. And when I say every major event, I mean stuff that happened in his childhood, his rock collection, him going to camp, even his piano lessons. And it is like this for his entire life. They just talk about everything, just literally everything. I can't even remember everything. That's how detailed this book is. This book, doesn't really do the best at engaging the reader, as it's just so full of information that can be really overwhelming. The only way it really engages the reader is with its topics, that being Robert's life and the history of the atomic bomb, if you're into that. Now, at the end of the book, the author makes the idea that Robert Oppenheimer will never be forgotten. Even several years after his death, people still talk about it, and they named a beach after his family, and I quote, "But in this place is a community house standing on what is now known as Oppenheimer Beach." Even today, people still talk about him in the Pornsea Hill. The most popular example of this being the movie Oppenheimer that was made in 2023. Very good movie, by the way. I would recommend that you watch it even if you haven't already. The impact Oppenheimer had on this world is explosive. Robert Oppenheimer had a massive impact on the world. He improved the landscape of physics, he inspired his students, but the most important impact is what he's most known for is the construction of the atomic bomb. The creation of the atomic bomb permanently changed the world forever. Thousands of people can die in an instant. The world can end with one wrong move, and we are constantly inventing bigger and bigger bombs to kill each other with. I don't know if Robert intended for this to happen, but intended or not, his actions did lead to this. Now, many of you are probably asking, if I recommend this book, should you read it? Now, my answer to that question is, it depends. This book is very long, very detailed, and at times can be kind of a drag. However, if you don't mind reading through 600 pages of this and you're interested in his life, then yes, I recommend that you read this book. If you're interested in the history of the atomic bomb, this book might not be for you, as it's important in the book, but most of it's Robert's perspective, and not really, but the bomb itself. If you want to read a high adrenaline, fast-paced book, do not read this book. I repeat, do not read this book. This is a slow book. It makes you ask questions, and is something you should read if you need to pass the time over a very long car ride. If you aren't interested in Robert's life or the atomic bomb, you might find enjoyment in this book, but the most likely option is that you're going to find this book really, really boring. If you're interested in reading the book, you should, it might change your perspective. Non-fiction texts are really important, I'm not just saying this because this entire podcast is based around non-fiction texts. Non-fiction texts are important because they teach students that people can achieve great things. I know this might sound really obvious, but when someone reads a piece of fiction, they see, these characters achieving great feats. They know that these feats and achievements are inhuman, and we can never actually do what these characters are doing. But that's fine because they're not real, they're just characters. It's fine if they do these amazing things. However, the reader, they can't really connect with these characters. This changes in non-fiction text. These characters aren't characters. They're real people with real accomplishments and real stories. It's easier for readers to connect with them because they are real. If they see these people doing great things, they think to themselves, maybe I can do this too. That is why non-fiction texts are just so important. They inspire, they teach students how to accomplish great things. That will be all today. Thank you all for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to support us and help us continue making more episodes like this.